and
Hey,
see.
Jesse.
Oh, it looks good.
Speaking of the devil, yeah, I had told him to put that light on in the front of the
Yeah.
computer, not in the front of the person. So
Right.
he did that, and now
Look
it's
at
coming
that.
in good.
That looks great.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Jesse. In
Hi,
person,
how are you?
sort of in person. Yeah, doing well.
Yeah, that's
Jesse,
that's nice.
I'm
this
all,
ma-
forgive me, I'm stressed out a little bit. I'm afraid of technology.
Oh, no, you've got it.
But, hey, Jesse, the only one here that's a technocrat, well, the other two people we Jenny and Morgan. You're looking at another person, so it's two of us.
Man.
I'm not either. So
Okay, Morgan.
Um,
All right.
Jesse, I haven't seen you in so long.
It's been a long time.
It has.
Long, what, 30
I'm
years?
I'm not as thin as I used to be.
You look all right to me. You look good to me.
Hey, always the gentleman.
He's
yeah,
that.
he seems to be.
I remember
Yeah.
those old days. Oh my
Oh yeah.
God.
Well, you
Hey.
can see from the people here, Jesse, that Morgan, and of course, you know, Jenny, we'll be very relaxed, as I said earlier during the interview. It'll be
Oh,
a
yeah.
conversation,
Yeah.
and forget about the technology and just think about your experiences.
Jesse, are you able to adjust the camera any? Like, are you on a laptop?
I'm on
The desktop?
desktop.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You've got the webcam.
I'm going off the webcam. I have
Okay.
another camera that was put up there, but it's not connected today.
Okay.
But I can see you okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. You think that looks okay, Roy? I was just going to get him to move the cam a little bit to
Well,
get
he
more.
can move the camera. I think the lighting, based on what I saw the other day, is much
yeah.
improved.
The
Yeah,
lighting
he,
looks great.
yeah, he can move the camera. You the filmmaker here, so
Can you? I was just going to try to get more of you. You know, like if you could do that a little bit.
How do I move the camera? I don't know how to move the camera.
Is it at the very top? Like, did they attach it at the top of
No,
your?
this camera is not attached at all. It's not
It's
attached.
So
Greg
his
was
camera.
gonna hook it up, but then when I talked to Roy yesterday, he said we want to go with this camera. That's what
Okay.
I understood him to say, yeah. And
Okay.
so Greg did not connect that because he had some problem connecting it. He said, "Well, I'll just wait."
Okay.
I called him back. He said he's gonna try to come by today, but then he called him back. Said no. He said, "Okay, yeah."
Okay. And you are on the desktop, not a laptop?
I'm on the desktop, right? It's sitting on a desk. Yeah, I'm on the
Right,
desktop.
the
Yeah.
desktop. Okay. Okay.
One of the things I mentioned, that light behind you, Jesse, turn that light off for just a second, and I'm going to ask Morgan.
The one in the ceiling or to the?
No, the one that's just right there on the desk,
The lamp?
the lamp.
Okay.
This one?
Yeah. Sometimes that light is reflecting off your face. I'm going to ask if that makes a difference to you, Morgan, or it's basically the same. It looks like it's better to me.
I think it's
like
a little
light.
better. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I think it looks good.
Yeah.
What do you think, Roy?
Yeah. I think it's look good. I think that light now in back of that his desktop has improved it much more.
Right.
Because it was very dark the other day, and now it's getting more light.
Yeah. Yeah. It looks great. Thanks for doing that, Roy.
Well, we had actually in 2004.
Jesse, now I know we talked about the spelling of your name.
Yes.
When we put your name on screen for the video, do you prefer Jesse?
That's okay with me. I don't. It's been used interchangeably all my life. So that's fine.
So just the Jesse?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
Okay, great.
What did your mother or your father name you, Jesse?
My mother named me Jesse.
Okay.
I was told I didn't know what the name was. So eighth grade, and they say, "Oh, so your name's supposed to be spelled. Boys is JSS."
And the girl was supposed to be IE.
Yes, I started USSC.
But you stay with the E, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, because I always spell it JESSE.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, I will pin Jesse's video to the screen if that's okay with you, Roy.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
And because I'm gonna focus on just the cue, the
Right,
questions, and we
okay,
got
so-
started. As I said to Jesse the other day, we hope to keep this to within an hour. Because after an hour it gets a bit long. And I also mentioned to Jesse at some point, if he needs to, break away, we can stop it. And we got the pro behind with the camera. And so it's all recorded anyway, and they can do whatever edits that they need to do. In my case, I have moved the phone away from me and I got my headphones on. So Morgan, we shouldn't have any problem with phone ringing.
Right, okay. Jenny?
Are you gonna mute me and take me off?
I can mute you and your camera and you can watch. How about that?
That's fine.
Okay, I'll do that.
And
And Jesse, remember, if at any point you need to stop and get water or take a break or ask a question, that's fine. We can edit things together and you can go back and
Well, thank you.
add to a story or whatever, so let me mute. Whoops. Okay. Well, all righty.
Okay, so you just tell me when we're ready, Morgan. I got a clock here by my desk, so that's gonna help me kind
Okay.
of keep tabs of time. So as we approaching the 1 o'clock hour, you can just I'll look at the clock, but you can kind of give me a little hand signal or something like that.
Okay. That sounds good. We're ready, Roy. And Jesse.
Okay, ready, Jesse?
Yes.
Okay, today is Friday, February the 19th, 2021. My name is Roy DeBerry, and I'm joined via Zoom by Miss Morgan Cuterini on the camera. We're speaking today with the illustrious attorney, Jesse Pennington, from his home, also via Zoom in Jackson, Mississippi. Jesse, I just want you to start with just giving us a short bio, your place of birth, maybe something about your parents, a little bit about your grandparents, if you recall, your siblings, and perhaps a little something about your wife and children. And then we can talk about your early schooling, and then college and any military, college, law school. Now, I'll go back over this, but I didn't want it to be a Q&A at that point. I just want you to start off by giving us a short bio about who is Jesse, place of birth, and that along that line.
Okay. I'm Jesse Pennington. I was born in a place called Percy, Mississippi, July the 1st, 1938. My father was and family was from Hollandale, Mississippi. He had 7, 8 other brothers. They all lived there. And my mother was from more of Southwest Mississippi area. And so when we were, when my father and my mother, they married, and my father, when I was 3 months old, moved to a place called Scotts, Mississippi, which is north of Greenville. It's known as the Delton Pineland Company. One of the companies that's not known by most Mississippians, but it was an English-owned company. The royal family had an investment in the corporation, and they were the largest cotton plantation in Mississippi. They started back in 1912, somewhere back in that area. That's right. And that's where we lived, and I lived there until 19 and in the early 50s, and my father at that point in 1955 1984, moved to Greenville, Mississippi. And in Greenville, I had, while living in Scotts, Mississippi, there's a Pennington company, where I went to a church school there. It's called Seven Star Baptist Church. And one teacher, Miss Annie Mae, taught grades from 1 through 8. That was the highest grade. And one teacher, and it was actually there were only about 20-some students in the whole school. And everybody was taught at the same time. So that's the way it was in. Grew up on a plantation there. We had a plantation. My father was a truck driver for the company, but my mother and the kids, we were sharecroppers for the land there. My oldest brother, Charles Pennington, did not care for farming at all. So he basically left early. And I began doing the plowing and the land at about, about 10 years old. At 10 years old, on through till we moved there, I worked the land and cotton. What had happened with me was that working those heavy equipment caused me to build up muscle. So at 12 years old, I had about 180 pounds, mostly muscle, with strength at that point in time, working on the field. The other thing about it, it was another experience we had. The Delton Pineland Company, so it was owned by the English, and we met them there. And I remember the first time going to what they call a settlement in December. First time seeing the Englishmen. We used to call them Englishmen. And the first time I've seen really white people, because their skins, they came to go, they came to the settlement once a year, that they were white. Most white people in the area were not because of the sun. They were, darker. First time I've seen real white people. And it was just kind of frightening looking at them and stuff. So from there, we went to, after we moved to Greenville. I moved to Greenville in 1954, late 53. And then in 1954, I went to, for some reason, my mother said we were going to go to the Catholic school. Went to the Catholic school in Greenville, Mississippi, which was called Sacred Heart. They know about it, and I was afraid of nuns and all those dresses, so I'd never seen anything like that. Anyway, so I went to school there, and since I was the only person in my school when I left the plantation group of Scotts, Mississippi, I was teaching. One teacher told me I was going to be in the 8th grade. And I went to Sacred Heart in Greenville. I walked in, and the lady, nun said to me, "Well, the kids in the country schools don't do well. I don't know if you're able to go into the 8th grade or the 9th grade. I was supposed to go graduate to 9th grade." And she put me in the 9th grade and gave me a book to read, and I couldn't read that well. She sent me back to the 8th grade, and I tried to try to read there, and I couldn't read there. And the nun took me up, so I'm going to take you back to the 7th grade. And she walked me back in the 7th grade. She stopped, looked at me, she said, "Oh, no, you're too big. Ooh, I can't go. You can't sit no place. You got to go." So based on my size, she put me back in the 9th grade. And the summer from there, she said, but anyway, and then at the same time, I became the janitor for the school. And had an early learning experience. I was down in the basement, cleaning up from the school. And a nun came down, Sister Celine came down and said, "Jesse, don't you like study? You read, you never ask a question, you never do anything. Don't you love doing any of that?" No, so she came back and gave me a book, a little book. It was a story. I can't remember the name of it. They told me to read that. I took it home that night and I read it the first time, and I was so excited. Went back to school that morning, and I was most excited. I wanted to learn. At that point in time, that's when my learning began. And so then after, finish what happened was thinking after the next year, 1954. Coming in June, at the end of that year, Brown versus Board of Education was decided by the U.S. Supreme Court. The last day of school, it was that May for that, getting out for that summer, 1954. The nun said to us that we were going to have to go to school with white kids. And I stood up and I never said anything in that. Stood up in front of the class and group and said, I don't want to go to school with no white kids. And she put a finger in my face. I'll never forget that. She said, the reason you say that, you feel inferior to white people. That's why you're saying it. You feel inferior. And then that stuck with me, never left me. So anyway, so that was that year. Then another quick story. Afterwards, that way, done the summer, I had a job working at a car park. So on my way home, and I got stopped on the side of the road by several men, including the deputy sheriff. I was waiting back to home. And they accused me of some things and said some stuff, and they said some stuff about the school decision. And they, got at me. I won't go into the details on that, but anyway, I had to run and get away.
Yeah, let's hear the details. What happened? That's important.
What happened was there was a situation. They stopped me. When they stopped me, they tried to say something to me, and I got in a confrontation with them. And later on, they came with a mob to my house. Actually, a lynch party. They came to get me. My father had already gone out in Chicago, and my mother, my father, before he left, was building a hole in the underground of the house to try to put a bathroom in the house. And my mother had me, when they came for me, they had me to go down and get down in the house in that hole. They covered me up that way. And then they looked for me and they come they had a lunch party. They had a truck, they had people on the truck, and they had some dogs. And so mother put me in that truck there. So I got in the truck, and then after I'm stayed on the ground. Then they went away, and mother was trying to find somebody to get me out of town because they were coming back to me. And my sister, and then about an hour later, she was trying to get people to connect with the street. So my sister was outside. She saw the truck. She said, "Here come the sheriff now with the dogs on there." So they had to come in, a group of people on there with the guns and stuff. They came in. What I did was I went outside and we had an outdoor toilet that was full. I was building another hole to remove to do another toilet on there. So then what I did was I got into the toilet, stayed there. And they had the dogs came out. The dogs came to the house, and they tried to get in there, kick it up the door. But the stench was so strong that it was bothering them. So they tried to get those dogs away from there. I was saying that saved me. And then they finally left. When they left, I found they got some people took me over and took me out to the woods and washed me. And then my aunt had come, lived in Chicago. She came down for holiday when my family was home. That same night, she came down, and what she did, they finally got me. They took me I went to my grandfather's house, who lived in the country from us. She came by that next morning, picked me up, and drove me all the way. I put me in the trunk of the car until I got to Kentucky, and then around Chicago. That's how I ended up in Chicago.
What a story. That's the story we need to hear, Jesse, because essentially what you're saying, had you not been in that toilet, basically, had you not been in that hole that had been built for you, and then subsequently you would have been lynched.
Right. In 2004, when I had the lynching exhibit that came to Jackson State, the lynching sanctuary.
Right. I was there when they helped bring that to Jackson State. Yes.
Yeah. Were you there, Frank?
Yeah. Oh, yes. We were there with Dr. Mason, and we had it there in the old house. We had the event there. Yes.
I remember I had my breakdown.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. That's why that's why I want you to tell that story.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the base story. Then, of course, we left Mississippi and I came out there.
Speaking about Mississippi, you left under those circumstances, which obviously was the nature of the beast at that time. You went to Chicago, and then you had gone to the Catholic school in Greenville. Did you ever consider, before you went on to college, becoming a Catholic, since you had been at that Catholic school and had been taught by a Catholic nun?
I became a Catholic in Mississippi, in Greenville. The first year I got baptized and I was in the Catholic church there. So when I went to Chicago, I was Catholic. I was a baptized Catholic. And I went to St. Malachi Church in Chicago. It was on the west side. There where we moved to. I went to school there. And I graduated from St. Malachi.
So you graduated from high school in Chicago?
Yes, I did. Okay,
and then from after that, what college did you attend? Was it Howard, or did you attend Howard University Law School?
It was later. At the beginning, I attended Wright Junior College in Chicago, University of Illinois, Naval Pier, Junior College, and then 2 or 3 in another junior. I did about 3 different junior colleges. I was struggling to try to get ready for school and things. So, and I did that. That's where. And then right before year before I left the Roosevelt University, I got a chance to meet Eleanor Roosevelt back in those days. Most impressive woman I ever met in my life. She came she came to Chicago. The YMCA in Chicago was a major, like a junior college. There was everything all over the street, and they were not admitting blacks to that, and some of the schools were getting that. So what she did was she, in a period of about 6 months, a year, got with a guy, they started Roosevelt University. I think they said the most money raised within a year in any university that started out. I think 25, 30, 40, $50 million was raised, and they immediately started Roosevelt. Roosevelt was a new college there. So then later on, I ended up going to Roosevelt.
Oh, that's also a fantastic story. Being able to encounter Eleanor Roosevelt at that time and then go to the school that she had a lot to do to build.
And also at that time, the African countries were becoming independent then. The place that they were set, Roosevelt University was a key place that all the early leaders came to Roosevelt. And I was in school that I got to see meet all of them. All the leaders coming by there with me at that time. That was the key thing for getting them connections to help them build their countries up.
Fantastic. Jesse, let me ask you, given all of that, what you've shared with us so far, and from the time that you mentioned living on the plantation and then meeting the English people that had a lot to do with the ownership of that plantation, going on to the church school there, encountering the nun and the Supreme Court decision of 1954, and of course the influence of your parents and grandparents in getting you out of Mississippi to Chicago. Who would you say had the greatest at that point, before we will talk about it later about other things, but had the greatest influence of your life while growing up? You just mentioned the tremendous influence that Eleanor had on you, but who would you say had the greatest influence on your early life?
It was my mother and my father. My mother and my father had great. My mother kept me going. Mother would always say to me, I was in the days of deep down hard segregation. I mean, it was just like, wow. Mother would always say to me, I never forget it, you're just as good as they are. Don't matter. You know, it's a law, but you're just as good. That's one thing that kept me going. You're just as good. Don't worry about it. You're just as good. It's because of your race, but you're just as good. They always remember that. She said. That's something that she did quite a bit.
Wow.
Kind of inspiring. And then also, I have another cousin. Another thing that was an influence in my life too was my mother had a cousin. She called him Cousin Dan. Cousin Dan was the tallest black man I had ever seen. He had, and when I first he always wore a hat on his, always had a hat on his head, had an eyeglasses, and had one eyeglass had total was tar covered one of the lenses. I mean, thick tar covered the lenses. That way, I was always come by the house one time. One time he came by our house, and he was in the back room. And back in those days, the rooms had old wall, you could see through the wall. When I saw him in the wall, through the wall there, his back, he had his clothes off, his back, he was looking at his back and whipped. He was whipped all the way down to the back. You know, those rope you seen on those backs, people been beaten and stuff like that. So and I read out, Mother, what happened to Dan? What happened? She said, what Dan grew up in Southwest Mississippi, and he and a little whitewater place they lived on, they were good friends and they were great friends. So what happened is the boy's father had some people come visit him from Virginia. And when they were leaving, he told them to say goodbye. He and Dan were like brothers. I mean, he and Dan, because they play back and forth. And his father told the other folks say goodbye to Mr. Boy, call him Mr. Boy. I can't remember his name, Roy. Say goodbye, Mr. Roy. And Dan said, I'm my friend. And what he did was he beat him up real bad, and they left. And then from that point on, Dan got beat all the time. He was beaten everywhere he goes. He would say yes sir, no sir to white Dan. And he was called Black Dan. Black Dan was just quit. I mean, he just had so much courage. I mean, he would just say no. They'd take him out and beat him up. And he would, so what he would do when he wanted to go to the store to buy something, he would have somebody write notes on him, give the notes to the person so he wouldn't have to say yes sir, no sir, that kind of stuff. And he refused to do it. And that impressed me, something like that. That really did. That stayed with me.
Thank you so much for that. Those are just powerful stories. So that's something about some of the earlier life and some of the earlier influences of people that impacted you. Let's move now to, and then you can talk a little bit about law school, but I think this has a relationship to the law school piece. I know you lived and did some work in Mary Holmes. How soon after law school, and then tell us where you went to law school, that you get over to the Mary Holmes area? In other words, how do you get back to Mississippi after college or after law school, and you ended up in Mary Holmes Community College?
Well, when I moved to Chicago, and I graduated high school, then started to go to college back and forth, to junior college, anyway. In addition to that, I was still also am a fighter. I spent 14, 15 years in the fighting. And I did that to help, make a little money and stuff like that.
I understand you were very good at it too, from people that I've talked to about that. Go ahead.
But from that point, then when I started, go to school there in Chicago, working a little thing, and then when I ended up, it was time to go to armed military. I would receive a draft notice. And what I did at that time, after that, I was in college, I dropped out, and I volunteered for the draft before they called me. Somebody was going to be drafted within a year, so I went ahead and volunteered for we got that thing. I went into the military. And then while in the military,
What branch?
I went into the Army. Went into the Army, basic Army, went to Fort Leonard, Missouri for basic training. While in basic training, a recruiter from the Airborne came in to recruit us, and so I joined in, and several of us got in there and got selected for the Airborne. And after I finished my basic training, I went to Fort Benning, Georgia. My Airborne training, when I finished the Airborne training, certified Airborne, I was sent directly to Okinawa they want to revive the 173rd Airborne Brigade. And they did that. So they kept sending us over until they got to the brigade, which could totally enough men to reorganize. And they were just reorganized to go into Vietnam. But I went in. I spent a couple of years because I was the clerk for the lieutenant. There was a lieutenant and a general there, and I worked for them, and we just ran stuff. And so what I did, I was able to help them build the unit up until the unit was ready to go to Vietnam. At that point in time, my time had expired. I had couldn't mind. I had a 2-year draft thing, but then what I did, I extended for a year to help to get the unit ready to go to Vietnam. Then I left and came back. At that point, came back and stayed. And when I came back, I also, in addition, while I was there, the University of Maryland, I had overseas campuses. They would teach people. So where I was in Okinawa, the University of Maryland overseas campus, I went to school there. Got enough credits and all to almost graduate. Really bad about a year graduation. So when I got out of the service, was discharged from the service, I was already admitted to the University of Maryland overseas campus. I mean, the University of Maryland at the main campus in Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got in, was started to go to the campus there to complete my education. I got on when I got off the train in Chicago, I decided something. I got off the train and had myself in the locker, and just took a bus. Got on the bus, and the bus came directly by Howard University, and I jumped up and screamed and put emergency cord because I had heard everything about Howard, which is so wonderful. I heard about it. And I got off and got out and went on the campus. And I went on the campus. I said, I've got to come to Howard. And I said, I want to come. I said, I want to visit the University of Maryland and I had other courses. So they did. And I had also gone to school in my college, my credits in Chicago too. So they considered me, and Howard let me in. I got admitted to Howard. And went there because Howard, I always wanted to go to Howard. I was really in love with that school. But what I hated, the thing about me, when I say growing up in the country, I didn't have I didn't feel I had intellectual skills. I had strength. I was the strongest person ever in my area. Nobody was stronger than me. That's what my strength, but not, I didn't think I could matriculate to Howard. I didn't think I could do it. That's why I never tried. But then I got admitted, and that's what so. Ended up going to Howard. That's why I ended up going to Howard. And then when I got admitted to Howard, I also later, I had about a year and a half to do 2 years, almost 2 years. And then I got also admitted to law school. And that's when I started law school there.
Did you do the law school at Howard as well?
Yes, I did. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, so interesting thing about that. So you did both Roosevelt, you did University of Maryland, overseas campus, and then Howard University.
Yeah.
And so you got a combination of quite a few institutions.
I certainly did, yes.
And regarding the issue about the strength, so you was truly a Renaissance man. In the old Greek, you're supposed to be strong and brilliant. So I guess you were both.
Yes.
So Howard was a great experience, and I'm not going to talk about all the great people you probably had an opportunity to meet at Howard because that was in Howard's heyday. But how did you end up in Mississippi? Back in Mississippi.
Oh my God! While I was at Howard University, a young lady called Fannie Lou Hamer came on Howard.
Oh Lord!
Oh my God! I never forget her. Met her, and she was out outside, and she said. But what I had at the time, I was not planning to come back to Mississippi. I was going to go to Chicago and get one of those good jobs. We call them good jobs there.
Right.
But she said, "John, you got to say, where you from? Mississippi. You got to go back there. You got work to do there." And she was the first one to start persuading me I need to go back there. Then I started beginning to look at that, as a return to Mississippi.
I had no idea. You talking about learning something that, first of all, I had a chance to meet Fannie Lou Hamer in 1964 at the convention. And I had no idea that just until now that Fannie Lou Hamer was the one to encourage you to come back to Mississippi. What a story.
Yes. But there's another part of our story too, what I'll tell you when I come back. I came back to Mississippi. This is I'm jumping the gun. When I came back to Mississippi, we don't bring it at Mary Holmes College. Mary Holmes College was there. But Mary, when I came back to Mississippi, of course, should I leave that? I came back, well, when I graduated from law school, I came back to Mississippi. I came back because Pennington Hamer said I needed to come back. She got me interested. From that point on, when I was a third year law student, I received a resident, he was a fellowship, law fellowship degree. It was about, they called it the Reggie program. And what I did was basically I chose to come back to Mississippi. And at that time, it was open in Mississippi, was North Mississippi Legal Service had already opened. And Mike Chris had just opened that program, he had a several program. And then in graduated from that year, that year of 69, the resident program was getting pretty broad around the country, sending students all over the area. The working legal service program was just starting then, working on get poor people. And I ended up accepting, getting a Reggie, and I ended up going to come to Mississippi with that. And that's how, that was because of Pennington Hamer. I just they would not leave me. I could see a little lady looking at me, and with eyes and all eyes. And
right. She didn't sing for you, did she?
No.
Because that would have been another influence. So in terms of the Legal Services Corporation and Legal Services, North Mississippi Rural Legal Services, you came there. You said there were 4 of you at the time. Who were the 4 people involved with North Mississippi Rural Legal Services at that time? I know the man from Ole Miss had been one of the incorporators. Ben Cole was involved at the time, I would assume. Louis Myers. Who?
Well, Ben came later.
Okay, good.
In the beginning, it was Mike Trista came out of Boston.
Okay.
And then there was there's a couple guy, I can't remember his name. He was in Florida. They came there. And then in terms of, they started to, I think I'm not sure who the first black lawyer came out of that group, but they started. What happened? Ole Miss had already started admitting black students to school. And for that year, when they first got there, the first year, I think the program came there, Ole Miss started having their graduates, and couple graduates from that. I'm drawing a blank on the names now. That
okay.
Into the program, and then that's primarily it was Mike Trista doing that and setting it up, and then Lawyer Greenwood.
I was going to ask, was John Bradley involved at all at that point from Ole Miss, or was that later?
John who?
Bradley.
You mean John Britton?
No, John Britton is a black guy. John Bradley was a professor at Ole Miss.
John Bradley, but I don't remember Bradley.
Okay.
I know him, but
Well, just recall what you remember.
I just remember that. But then those guys came to law school. They were setting up the program, and what had happened at the same time on a national level, they had some of them I got in way to get some support away from legal services.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened is they had to get somebody to support them. Mary Holmes College became, when I came that year, Mary Holmes College was the, what do you call it? It was the
grant recipient.
Yeah. Recipient,
okay.
yeah, for legal services, right.
Okay.
Then at that year they just had to open up a couple of programs. They'd open up, I think the officer program had been opened up. Then the year that I came, they opened up, we were able to open up 5 different programs. Because when I came there, I went to West Point, the global office in West Point. And I went there, and when I went there at the same time, Tom Rawls and Tom Mayfield from Mississippi, they also were assigned, they got a grade, now they were assigned to go to West Point. And all 3 of us went there new, had to find an office for the program. And then I found an office. And then we all came in off the same time, and I became like the director, so there was 3 of them there. And
so were you the first executive director of North Mississippi?
No, I was the first. No. I was the first of the West Point program. So I came to West Point. Oxford was the first program. Oxford, Mississippi, it was the first one they set up. The law school there. They set it up.
Okay.
There. And then Then it began about 3 years later, started to develop and move out. When the funding came in from Legal Services Corporation, they just started that money. They started that way. And so then they started to form programs all around the country. And so when I got the Reggie program, when I got the Reggie Fellowship, they sent me to Mississippi.
Okay.
And when I came to Oxford, Mike Christopher, the director, said that they want to open an office in West Point. They chose me to go to West Point, Mississippi to open the office there.
Got you.
So I ended up doing that. Because what had happened at the same time, on the national level, Eastern did something to take away the funding source from Legal Services. I can't what it was, but anyway, Mary Holmes became the grantee for the program.
Right. Well, you know, they did the same thing with Head Start. Eastland working with, put a lot of pressure on. I think that at that point, Nixon may have been president. That was after, sometime after Johnson. And so that was a strategy that was used. They didn't want the money to come directly through the state because they know the state would take the money and put it somewhere else. So Head Start did the same thing. They got direct funding. So that was a way to get to funding because otherwise Eastland, given his power, would have stopped it, is my understanding.
They would have, yeah. So what they did for me, Mary Holmes brought me when I came in there. They brought me and said, you can live on campus, gave me on house campus. And also I taught teach a couple of courses at the college as well.
Right.
And they get to stay there. And so then I was able to find the office open there. And some of me when I came in. What we did at that point, we started doing, that the difference. My whole idea about, in fact, when I started, since none of us have been formed in the work, I was empowered, empowered. I call it empowerment idea. I want to empower. I want people to know. I let it right now. I'm a lawyer. A lawyer means that I got connection. I make connections. That's what I try to do all around the time working in. So when we formed the office, we first began, and in fact, we had just got to the schools were still under segregation at the time, and the West Point School we took over that because it had been taken. Some people out of Jackson's ran, so we took that over. But that pretty much been settled. And then that's where we did that, and then we began to do the legal cases running. And what I did was only in terms of lawyers outside of Jackson at the time, the African American was me up in the northern part of the state. And what I did, my thing was to go all over every county in North Mississippi, including where you live, Hot Springs, was to go there and just connect with people, empower. We got a lawyer, need something, call me, call us. I can get people to help you. So that's what I did. Everywhere I went, I would do that. And I was just like excited about that.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful because I was going to ask you, it looks like you've already said, what role as a teacher, mentor, did you play in terms of mentoring early African-American lawyers? And I think you mentioned that's some of what you were doing with that connection.
Yeah. Well, first thing you did, once we opened the office, we made connections that way, back and forth and that sort of thing. And I jumped the gun a little bit, but as the research program went on, other things kind of having all this segregation problems back and forth. When I came to West Point, and they were high school working there, and they were having problems with the high school. They came there and had some issues. James Paul, an African American student, just walked out. I got up to walk out of school. Something he wouldn't like what was going on. And what they did was the principal called the board, and they had a meeting the next day, and they brought the students in who walked out, and they were expelled from school. I'm saying expelled from school. And we filed a case in the district court to get them back in school. And the case was filed on, they felt they get due process. Of course, I do process of law. That's the first time I see what due process of law really meant. They called the kids the first day, told them, say, you're going to you a hearing tomorrow, and you tell your parents they came to the hearing that they were expelled. And the question, I remember, don't forget, we filed a suit, and the judge said, if somebody told the principal, if somebody told you that today, I want you to come back tomorrow and have a hearing, then you're gonna be fired from your job. Would that be fair? He didn't say anything. Judge said, well, no. So due process of law is, that's for example, rules of due process. You just can't keep people out and come back here. So that's the way that happened like that. So the people got back in and started to build up in the high school. Started to build up. That young man, James Pearl, I learned a lot from me. He gave me a lot of stuff to do, and we did a lot of things together.
Okay, let me ask you, I know you were talking about legal services there in West Point, and you talked about it in Oxford and how it spread throughout North Mississippi. Were you in private practice for a while there in West Point?
Okay, yes, what I did, let me tell you this story. That's one of my other things, empowerment again. I was, the second year I was there, I was at a high school. I was at the West Point High School. I was doing a law day. I was doing things like law, stuff like that. And I asked anybody in the audience if they were going to become a lawyer. And two different white students stood up and said, yeah, I want to become a lawyer. I'm going to come back to West Point to practice with Sam Law Firm. The other one said, Phil, I'm going to become a lawyer. I'm going to come back there. James Hull, that from there, got up and said, I'm going to become a lawyer and come back to West Point, and sat down. From that point on, I said, no, wait a minute, I got to do something about that. You need a place to come to. And my idea was, so after I finished in my third year at legal school, I decided to set up a private practice.
Okay.
I set up a private practice in West Point, the first African-American firm in that area. It may have been somebody in Meridian, I'm not sure. But set up a private practice firm there. And that's when I brought in Benny Turner and Randolph Walker.
Yeah, is that the same Benny Turner who later went on to become the Mississippi Senator?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he came to that. Yeah.
Okay.
The idea was to have a place so they could come back to go. That's why I did that. Now, they never intended to stay permanently there. And so after years, I kind of left.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned Holly Springs earlier, my hometown. And of course, there's Skip Robertson.
Yes.
So Skip Robertson, Dr. Howard Gone, not from Holly Springs, but Miss Mildred Qualls, Reverend Wayne Johnson, Miss Dora Adams, Miss Laura Hampton. You knew all those people, I assume.
Yes, I did, yes.
What role did the community play in the development of legal services in its early days?
Was the strongest role ever. That's one thing that we did. North Mississippi. I don't know if on the program did it was something that we started. We had a community organization for every legal service office, for every county. We served 39 counties. Every county we had a community organization there for legal services. Legal service advisory committee. Every county that we served had a legal service. And though they will let us know and keep us informed in this way, help us on stuff. We need people to help us with pressure, march, all that kind of stuff to keep on. But they would meet, so we would meet and inform them what things were going on in terms of rights going on, what cases were going, how the progress was going legally, all of that. That was very important. I mean, that was key. Community involvement was very key, having them involved in the project. Yes.
Do you think that had there not been these kind of organizing around the community development people, it would have been much more difficult for legal services to have been as successful as it was had they not existed?
It would have been much more difficult. In fact, if you look at the program in other states, we were the only program that had that connection, and we were connected down to the bottom with the truth. We had certain people who were a lot more like, for example, up in your county, Skip Robinson was, they were individuals who were more strong, individuals out there strong, but we all had basically was a community organization. They were part of that. And that really helped us.
What about Henry Boyd? Do you recall anything about Henry Boyd?
What I call about him, Henry Boyd was one of our paralegals. He was in the community. He was helped to organize, we need meetings, help organize, get people to support all that. I liked him. He was good. He was good. In that area, I worked with him a lot, worked with other folks a lot. Anytime we need protests, people get involved, that kind of stuff, he would do that. What you needed that time was to get people involved, having this involved. Yeah, Henry was excellent. And plus in that little courage, you was courage.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And also have Skip Robinson all in there too as well.
Right.
But with the League of Service, without the community groups, like people like that, we wouldn't have been there. We were just another little legal thing and so on. But the influence spread great because of that involvement.
Right. Do you think, given the fact that there were few, as you mentioned, few Black attorneys at that time, anywhere in Mississippi, particularly North Mississippi, I think there were a few more around Jackson. Do you think that your influence there in that area perhaps contributed to more people going to law school and being engaged with Mississippi Rural Legal Services?
Yes, I think so, yeah. Engage with us, it was very much so, yeah. And it is. What I did, I took all my 39 counties that I'd served, and there's a lot of them. And what I would do, I'd make it a point, at least once or twice we could go to a faraway county to let people know what we were doing, who I was, what we were doing. Connection, we connected. I remember having to drive my little car running over deers and little animals up and down the road. My car, we all been up in the front. But I had to get out and let them know these kind of things, let them know that they were empowered. Things had changed. You could do something. You could talk to people. You could make connections here, for you. And that helped a lot.
You talked about your experience of the people that came, the night riders that came to get you, to lynch you, and you had to leave for Chicago. Were there examples of violence or the threat of violence, particularly related to the fact that you all were doing the people's work and you were going up against the system in a way? Were there instances where you felt threatened this time around, being in West Point, going from these outposts on those counties where you had to serve people?
Yes, I did. I felt threatened, and I felt that it was when I felt threatened, I knew it was working. It was working that way because getting people in. The main thing for me to do was to get other people, the people I was talking to, get them more involved in the process, get out and do what I'm doing, do this, do that. And what I did also is another thing that people don't realize that I did. When I came to North Mississippi, I went to all these county courts everywhere, all over the state. And what I would do would go in the court. And as an African American, I would just go up and walk up to the front of the court and I would sit for people. But when I first came to court, it was just like segregated, Black folks sit on one and white folks on the other side. But I would come in and I would go on the other side of the courtroom and I'd ask somebody to come over and talk to me that way and bring them over. That way, what I did, I got people used to doing that. And I never forget when I went into the court and people would see me walk and say, God, what's he doing over there? And then I would tell them afterwards, this is what I want you to do. This is our courtroom for everybody to be in. You don't have to do that. So,
You can model.
I did a little kind of show. It was different. It was different. It was just a little natural, like it's a natural thing to do. I wasn't afraid. It was natural to do kind of stuff. And they would say, oh, okay.
Oh, I got you. I could have so great influence on people. The hiring of John Buffington, staff development. Did you have anything to do with that?
I did. John Buffington was incredible. When I came to West Point, he was already there. He had Clay County Development Program was already set up. It was already set up. He done all John did a lot of things. I mean, he raised money. He built daycare centers, all kinds of people involved. And he had connections all over. He had a long time been involved in the movement way back in the days with the Student Nonviolent Committee and all those folks. Yeah, John was incredible, and his wife Terry Buffington. They were also very much out there. And their influence was kind of all over there, but they were strictly in West Point. They were really thing, but it spread out in different areas of the place. And he kind of used me to help him on all this. So we use each other to work in our areas. Yeah.
Oh,
John.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. We haven't talked really, and I want to ask you, this won't be long before I ask you your final question, but related to the executive directors, you had mentioned a couple. Who were all the, and I thought you had been one as well, but you recalled all the executive directors for Mississippi Rural Services?
Yeah.
Well, I know
yeah.
Wilhelm Joseph.
Yeah. Well, I too was the executive director.
Exactly.
Well, let me tell you, my head of the plan, my executive director, when I spent the 3 years at opening the service office in West Point, there, when I spent the 3 years, I went 69, that's in the 72, 73, I think it was, yeah. And what I did when I when I left the program there, I went into private practice. Private practice was to actually to bring people back to the program there. Then after I left the private practice, in 1975, I was a private practice. Senator Paul Douglas from Illinois, when I was in law school at Howard, I had worked on him on as the representative of the Capitol Police Force. I spent 3 years on the Capitol Police Force while I was in law school. Those 3 years. On the Capitol Police Force.
We could have used it during this last insurrection, but we won't. We won't deviate. Go ahead.
but anyway, what I did at that point in time, I went to Micronesia. In the Micronesia, South Pacific Island, and there on this island, they were just trying to get their status, come out of the United States, Columbia States, empire. So what he asked me to do, I worked for him. He asked me to go. So I went to Coral, Palau, which is in the South Pacific Island, 500 miles east of the southern Philippines of Mindanao. It's part of the trust territories now. I went there to help them get their constitution together, and I was the director of a legal services project there, and that's what I did. Went there to do that. And when we got that kind of done, I came back from Micronesia, then I came back to Mississippi. Came back to Mississippi, I became back in here as deputy director for the entire program. We had 12 officers, and I came at 12 officers. Came back to Oxford as the deputy director for the program, and Wilhelm Joseph was the executive director. And we worked and we revitalized the whole program and did the heirs case, all those kind of.
That was a big one. The heirs case. Was that the last case involving litigation for Mississippi Rural Legal Services?
Well, that was kind of like not for them, but that was an outside case.
Okay.
People realize that North Mississippi Legal Service was not supposed to be part of the case, but in order for us to get the money to do the process of the case, what I did was basically use an area stated. These are our clients. We had clients who were eligible for our services, but at the same time, they also want to go to university as well.
Mm.
We could use them as clients, and they allowed us to legally to use them as clients. So the money primarily for the lawsuit came primarily from legal services to get the heirs case going and started. And that's what that was about.
Y'all were very adept at getting around the system to get things done.
Well, I had a thing for the call, doing what we do best. What we do best is keeping these services are really funded all around the country because they were doing things like using money to this and that. But I try to use the money for the legal purposes. Now, every time. So the Eastern and the Senate, I was investigated 2 times, twice a year, but never really, we were always under the proper. We didn't use money to, spend for goodies or some program which I take a staff to the islands and spend a weekend. They all get defunded and get fired, that kind of stuff. Right? So we were able to do that and it worked out well.
Well, then, it's amazing. It's amazing when you're having a good conversation how quickly you get up on the hour. And I think we're getting close to that.
Okay.
Go Go ahead. No, I was going to ask you, could you like to share with us any found things without your experience? And then one of the things I would hope that you would do, in addition to the work that the Legal Services Corporation now is, I'm not Legal Services Corporation, but Mississippi, North Mississippi Rural Legal Services, with respect to this documentary, with respect to this interviewing that they are doing, trying to capture all the people like you that have contributed so much to this organization. One of the things that I would just suggest that you need to do independently of this, and it's up to you, but you, given all these stories, you need to have your own book and make sure that we hear some of these stories that we don't have time to hear today. But could you share some last, as we leave you, some things you would like to just share with the audience out there about Jesse Pennington and your kind of road with this whole legal process and your work with legal services?
My work with legal services is probably one of the best things that I did and like doing. Was it allowed me to just go out and to meet other people, and also added having a lawyer connected to your name gave you an opportunity to go places you couldn't otherwise go without the lawyer concept. And that was done a lot. And what I did was sometimes things you don't see, you connected people, you gave people hope. I was always doing hope. I would always go around and people say, there's hope, there's hope, there's hope. Things gonna do well. And I was, of course, always a student of Dr. Martin Luther King about the arc of the moral universe. You know, it's long, but it's slow, there's no towards justice. I constantly was doing that, you know, reminding people that stay with the program, stay with it, it's going to be okay. You know, that believe in yourself, believe in the government, believe in the Constitution. And we've seen a lot of things that happen in countries of what's happening, and it's still going very strong. And that's what I feel like. I mean, my problem with falling in love is I fell in love with this concept of Constitution. I still am, in spite of what happened in the last couple of years with Trump and all that stuff. Our government is standing strong and stood tall right now. So remain that way.
Well, Mr. Pennington, we are just pleased. We're coming up on the end of the hour that you've been with us, that you've been gracious with your time. And we just thank you so much for allowing us to come into your house and talk to you for about an hour.
Well, thank you for having me. If anything more I can do, I've written some stuff. I have a few things I've written I can share with you.
Oh, absolutely. And if there's anything that during the edit process, because we got the pro there in Morgan, that she wants to follow up and to get some clarity, she or Jenny will be in touch.
Okay,
Right.
please.
And please do look for some photos like we talked about.
I certainly shall. I will Google my document. Yes,
Great.
I will.
And then we'll talk about how to get some copies of them after
Right. Thank you.
find some. Thank you.
Thank all
Enjoyed
of you
it
so
so
much.
much.
Thank
My-
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you.
And my best to the lady of the house.
Thank you. Right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.